Hello, everyone. My name is Pastor Lance Winkler, and I'm one of the worship leaders here at Morningside Church, and it's good to be with you. We're in the middle of a series, This Is Us, where we're giving our testimonies, each one of the staff. And I'm giving my testimony on the first 25 years of my life, because if I gave it on the entirety of my life, it would be a sermon series that would go to Christmas. So they asked me to shorten it up. So today, I'm going to give a little story that's outside of those 25 years. Now, the verse that I've chosen as my life verse is Romans 8:28, and I know probably everyone is familiar with it. For we know that all things work together for good to them who love God, who are the called according to his purpose. So let me tell you a little story about the birth of my third daughter, Emma. This took place 20 years ago this September. And it was a Wednesday. My wife and I had just moved from from Missouri to Kansas, and we were in a new house, and we were walking down the stairs. She was right behind me. And the stairs were carpeted, and she is 9 months pregnant. And I hear this, whoom! And I turn around, and to my horror, there she sits, having fallen, 9 months pregnant, on the stairs. And of course, I lean over. She says, I'm fine, everything feels great, don't worry about it, don't worry about me. Now, this was about 6 days before she was due. So we got up, went on, didn't talk about that. The next day, on a Thursday, I got ready to go to rehearsal for my band that was playing in church on the weekend. And so I get to rehearsal, which is a sacred time for me if anybody has rehearsed with me. These rehearsals are essential. But I'm there in rehearsal for about 15 minutes, and I got this feeling. And I turned to my guitar player, Bill, and I said, Bill, I need to go home. And he looked at me strangely and said, Lance, you need to go home. I went over, put my guitar in, closed up the case, walking out the door. As I'm walking out the door of the church, the senior pastor is coming in, and I turned to Adam and I said, Adam, I need to go home. And Adam looked at me strangely and says, Lance, you need to go home. So I get in the car, I drive home. I walk in the door, my wife says, what are you home for? I said, well, I just had this feeling. She says, I'm the one that gets the feelings. She says, and I don't have any. And she says, you're just wasting your time. You ought to go back to rehearsal. And I said, well, all right, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure, she said. So I went and I got a drink of water, and just before I'm getting ready to leave again, she says, wait. She goes, maybe something is going on. She says, I had that fall yesterday. She said, maybe I'm feeling something. Now, this was still 5 days before she was due. So I said, well, all right, let's get around, let's get ready. So in about 10, 15 minutes, we get things together. It's about a 15, 20-minute drive to the hospital. And we get to the hospital. Everything's okay, but she's starting to feel contractions. So they take her in, check her, and find out this baby is ready to be born. Now, my wife had had 2 other children prior to this. The first one, she had had drugs. The second, she gave birth at home without drugs. And she told me unequivocally, for the third child, she wanted to have drugs. So I wasn't going to argue with you. I said, that's fine, let's do that. The problem is when we brought her in, the delivery was so close, there was no time to get any. So, and on top of that, the doctor, we paged the doctor, couldn't find the doctor. They knew he was in the hospital, but they couldn't find him. And so finally, the nurse said, this baby is going to be delivered. Within about 20 or 30 minutes, we're there, within an hour. And just as the baby was being delivered, being born, the doctor walks in. He walks over. He sees the child. I'm standing right there, and the delivery of the child is happening. But the cord is around the baby's neck. And I can still see it as I close my eyes. He reached down to try to get a hold of the cord, but as he pulled the baby, the cord just contracted. And it took my breath away because it looked like it could be a fatal thing. And he realized he couldn't deliver the baby, so he delivered the baby, kind of breech, pulled the baby, and then began to unwrap the cord by swinging the baby up. And he unwrapped the cord once, and he unwrapped the cord twice, and he unwrapped the cord 3 times, and then he unwrapped the cord the 4th time. So we all breathed a sigh of relief. The baby started to cry. Everything was fine. We cut the cord. The doctor looked at me and he said, I've delivered over 2,000 children. He said, I've never had one with a cord around its neck 4 times. And he says, I will tell you, as short as that umbilical cord was, he said, if this delivery had taken a few minutes longer, he said, I don't believe that baby would have survived. And he said, she's early, isn't she? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, he said, it was a good thing I didn't get here on time. He said, I may have tried to give her some drugs or something, anything like that would have slowed the delivery. And he said, it probably would have been fatal for this child. So I think we understand why Romans 8:28, all things work together for good, is applicable to this story. Because, I mean, the falling and the seating of the baby's head, the weird instance of me leaving a rehearsal, which I would never do, early, the getting to the hospital, the doctor not being available, walking in, and if that doctor had not walked in at that moment, there's no way the nurse and I would have delivered that child successfully. And all those things worked together to bring my daughter, who is here 20 years later, into the world. And I tell her many times, honey, you've got to be here for a purpose. But I chose this specific story because of a verse that is earlier than Romans 8:28. It happens earlier. In fact, there's 2 or 3 verses. The one says, for I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not to be compared to the glory that shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creature is awaiting the manifestation of the sons of God. In other words, all of creation is waiting for the sons of God to be manifest, to be brought forth, to be birthed. And we see later on, right before 8:28, it says, for all nature groans in travail. And I love that word that Paul uses there in the Greek that is interpreted travail, because travail is the pain that brings forth life. Travail is birth pangs. Now we all suffer things and suffer pain in this life. But the pain of this life without Christ will only bring forth death and eternal separation from God. But what Christ did on the cross was turn the pangs of death into the pangs that bring forth life. That's what I saw in the situation with my daughter. Because it says, after Romans 8:28, it says this, who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? Nay, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. In other words, all the pain, all those terrible stones that Satan throws at us to crush us and to bury us, Christ has turned that pain into the stones that make a stairway that leads us right to him. It's an amazing, miraculous thing that he's done for us. And I think about this verse, and I think about what Christ has done for us every time I think about my daughter and her birth. Well, God bless you. We'll see you in church.